Hello and welcome to The Bleed, the place between realities within the DC universe. Through The Bleed, we can venture to other worlds and realities that are different from the main DC continuity.
Today on episode 5 of Into the Bleed,
we are heading to the reality I think many will be familiar with, the New 52, the beginning of a new universe, one that drastically changed many of its inhabitants in the wake of the Flashpoint. One person who was changed quite a bit, but maybe not in the ways you think, is Superman.
So let's take a look at Action Comics issue 5 by Grant Morrison, Andy Kubert, and Jesse Delperdang. Heading back to the past, not long after Kandor was bottled up by the Collector of Worlds, the planet begins falling apart. It's called destabilizing. Jor-El rants about warning the Council, but they didn't even want to hear out his plan for evacuating the planet before it meets its destruction. Jor hates that he was right about this as Lara wraps young Kal-El in Jor's cape, keeping the toddler safe and sound as Jor knows there is still a way they can escape. They can use the Phantom Zone. Using the Phantom Zone to escape Krypton's destructions isn't really an original idea. It's been done before, but it's one that I always really like since it relies much more on Jor's scientific genius than simple, rocket being launched off the planet and guided by an AI. And it's really because the zone isn't something you can just walk into. You need a special way to get in there, then you need to be able to actually get out of it, so you need special technology for that. All the stuff that Jor-El has somehow figured out in behind the scenes stuff. We've seen it done before in the comics when it dives into what the Phantom Zone exactly is, and maybe we'll get to see a little bit more of that in the coming issue. Jor takes his family to the Phantom Zone projector, but as they open the portal, it becomes clear that the super criminals imprisoned inside by Krypton's council are waiting for them with anticipation and the opportunity to torture Jor and his family as soon as they cross into the zone. One such zoner, Zardu, possesses a special gauntlet that allows him to actually reach out from the zone, trying to grab Jor-El and his family. Zardu is a character Morrison loves very much as he becomes one of Superman's main villains in the early New 52, and thanks to that he kind of gained a little bit of resurgence because he's an old school Superman villain, but he has been reinterpreted here for the New 52 and he's a lot more evil and a lot more villainous in this regard, and because of that he's kind of gotten a little bit more popular because of course after the New 52 used him quite a fair bit. Mark Waid actually used him recently in his Action Comics weekly series, back when that series was a weekly series. He was the main villain of his little Phantom Zone arc. Zardu is also the type of weirdo Golden Age villain Morrison loves to write, and I can't fault them for doing that either, since he really is a much more interesting Phantom Zoner villain than say your General Zod or your Non or your Ursa, at least in the New 52 that is. Luckily, before Zardu can grab Jor-El, Krypto leaps forward and bites the hand, allowing the family to escape unharmed. Unfortunately, the dog is lost into the zone, pulled inside by Zardu. Unseen by Jor-El and Lara, however, a red streak shoots out of the zone as they escape, something which comes back in maybe in the issue, maybe in a couple more issues time. We'll have to wait and see. One thing I really do like about Jor here is his drive to always find a way. He's always, through this first part, all his dialogue is basically, no, there is a way, we need to find it, we're scientists, there is a solution to this, we need to find that solution. And it's that perseverance that we see here carries on over into Kal-El, as he always tries to find a way to solve a situation, try to save someone, try not to kill. There's always a way out of there. Lara suggests that they save Kal-El at least by placing him in the prototype rocket meant to demonstrate Jor-El's plans for the Krypton evacuation. Heading back to Jor's lab, they uncover the rocket, but the prototype is only large enough for one passenger, and as such, they just choose to put their infant son in and save him. Jor has the computers chart a course to worlds where the sun is still young, so Kal will grow strong under its rays, and ones where the gravity is weaker, so he'll be able to fly. Morrison is no stranger to writing these sequences, having done so quite a few times. Best definitely being the All-Star Superman one he did, where it's literally told in 2 pages. This take on the origin is no different. It's got all those right emotional beats in it. Jor-El and Lara lamenting how they can't go, leaving their infant son to the dangers of the galaxy, but being brave and hopeful that their son will grow up right without them there to help him. The ship's systems, called Brainiac, activates, beginning its programming by calling out the names of the L's and how he is chronicling the history of their mission. The rocket blasts off from Krypton as the planet explodes, and Morrison paints this just wonderfully both with picture and the word, describing how the void roared loudly and a sound Kal-El, even as an infant, won't ever forget, and how the Phantom Zoner yells of anger faded along with the planet. And these words, coupled with Andy Kubert's just stellar artwork, just makes it that much more powerful. As the rocket escapes orbit of the exploding planet, it covers itself in a protective crystal, hurling itself light years into space. Eventually, the rocket finds Earth, but upon entering its atmosphere, its system fails, and it comes crashing down in a field in Smallville, Kansas. On a nearby road, Jonathan and Martha Kent tend to their truck's blown tire. Martha laments how their month has been nothing but bad luck. Jonathan thinks that she means the cow that gave birth to a deformed calf, but Martha knows it's actually more about the other miscarriage she had. So this is something that is often really glossed over a lot when it comes to the Kent's early history, since we move past this particular part very quickly in the storyline. And that part is Martha and Jonathan were trying to have kids, but they were never able to have any, being from a number of circumstances over the years, being, they were infertile, they just didn't have the chance to yet, all these different reasons. And Morrison and later on Shirley Fish in the backup kind of compiled them all into one thing after another. So there was this kind of like compounded trauma that the Kents have suffered through. It's something that always gets lost in the chaos of the origin, but I like Morrison, and then Shirley later on, as I said, is going to be shining a light on it, if ever so briefly. It also keeps these Moses allegories of Superman intact, as they've literally prayed for a child and one is delivered to them from the sky, from a literal light in the sky. Jonathan soon notices the light in the sky, following it as it impacts in a nearby field. The couple go and check it out, finding the rocket wreckage along with a small child. The couple take the baby, thinking that maybe this is the Russians, and as they speed away from the crash site, the military arrive, surrounding the rocket as the Brainiac intelligence inside scans the planet, finding the inhabitants are just apes with atom bombs. So instead of talking with them, he enters silent mode, refusing to interact with them as he is taken in by the army. Further down the road, the Kents are stopped by the army, who tell Jonathan that it's just a chemical spill and he's got to turn around and take an alternate route home. Jonathan tells the soldiers that he and his wife actually might have found something that might interest them, pointing to the bed of his truck where he has the wrapped, deformed calf remains, telling the soldiers that he reckons it's a spaceman. So I fucking love the payoff for this, because we actually saw the payoff before the story of it was actually set up. As we saw in a couple of issues ago, Superman is presented this calf, this deformed calf that Lex and the army had taken from Pa Kent back in the 80s, and they thought that this is what Kryptonians actually look like. They think they are shapeshifters, and I like that you can kind of tell through the art, through Andy Kubert's art, that it's just a couple of dumb like private soldiers, private first class soldiers. So they're like, don't know what an alien would exactly look like, so maybe they think that this is an alien, they bring it in, and everyone's kind of convinced that, oh, this is an alien. And it's kind of got this domino effect where eventually it reaches Lex, where he thinks Kryptonians actually look like that and are shapeshifters, and for all his smarts, he's still quite a stupid man. It's a little fantastic bit of payoff there. The military collects the rocket and conducts numerous tests on it, and years later, Kal-El discovers the rocket in a military facility he was captured in by Lex and General Lane. Superman instructs the intelligence inside to protect itself, promising he will return for it. Superman is unable to get through to it, as not long after his escape, the Collector of Worlds attacks Metropolis and bottles New Troy. So over the last couple of episodes, I said that things will start to get weird. Things will start to turn into Grant Morrison getting weird with this. And this is when Morrison leans into that really weird stuff like they do with these type of characters. And we get stuff like other dimensions, time travel, time flashes, and everything in between. It all gets involved in this story, which up until now has been rather simple and straightforward. It's been Superman, he's, early in his career, the champion of the oppressed, he's helping out the little guy. Been pretty simple up until, that last issue where, as Jimmy said, things are about to get a lot bigger and a lot weirder. So the book jumps around a bit in the timeline here as at Superman's Fortress of Solitude, which is now in the New 52, the ruins of Brainiac's skull ship in space. The rocket ship, now covered in a spiky crystal growth, remains. The intelligence inside knows that the coming of the Collector of Worlds also brought the age of superhumans with it. The fortress is soon blown open by the anti-Superman army, who have traveled back in time to this moment, since this is when the fortress was vulnerable to time travelers. The team, led by Phantom Zoner Zardu, is able to shatter the sunstone cocoon around the rocket, rocket, giving the group access to the rocket's engine, which is powered by kryptonite, the element which is lethal to Superman, or really anyone for that matter, being that it is radiation. Everyone for that matter except for Kryptonite Man Green, who is able to pick up the engine. So this is quite the right-hand turn Morrison delivers here as we move away from the early Kree Superman, champion of the oppressed stuff, into this, time-traveling Kryptonite men from the future coming to the near future, because the book is actually taking place in the past, but also the present. All very weird stuff, but as a fan of Morrison's work, I can't help but love it. I like that it all works. I like this whole idea that he set up where there was like this seal that has been cracked, which is, Superman kind of coming out and then the Collector of Worlds coming to Metropolis, and that's kind of broken this seal. The door has been flung wide open and now Superman has been exposed to a much larger, much weirder world around him. Zardu says that their benefactor wants to meet the Kryptonite men in the Tesseract, but before they can escape it, they are attacked, making the group realize that they were followed. One of the anti-Superman army members stays back as the others teleport away to the Tesseract as Superman and the Legion of Superheroes arrive, finding that the kryptonite engine from the rocket is gone and is now in the hands of the anti-Superman army. So since we are now set in the sorta near present but it's still the future, we also get to see Superman in his New 52 supersuit, the costume which, no matter whom it's drawn by, I just do not like it. I get why some people like it, I totally get that and respect that, but I personally don't like it, and it's not because it doesn't have the trunks or anything like that, it's because it's full of that early 2010s comic aesthetic, which is just all, high collars. It looks too armory and like shiny, and it has like all this weird like Jim Lee armor lines and piping around the arms, the red piping all around the costume. It just doesn't look right to me. It just doesn't sit right. It just looks like always whenever Superman is on the page, he looks like an action figure that doesn't have those posable arms that with the elbow sockets. It just looks like, solid arms, the way he stands, especially in this opening page here where we get to see the suit for technically the first time. If I do have to give the suit one thing, I do like the embossed S. I like the S that kind of looks like it has like some depth to it and like kind of like stands off his chest and isn't like actually part of the suit. It looks like it has like, it looks like a shield more or less. So like last issue, we get another wonderful backup from Shirley Fish, this time focusing on Jonathan and Martha Kent, beginning with their wedding day, which after tying the knot, the couple are eager to begin their own family. But trouble soon strikes as despite them trying several times, they just cannot seem to have kids. Martha doesn't think that they were meant to have kids, but Jonathan, ever the optimist, knows that Martha is going to make a terrific mother. They just have to keep trying. As I said earlier, I love Morrison and now Fish are both broaching this often looked over part of the Kent's life before Clark, and Shirley gives it a really great go here, not shying away from the reality of the Kent situation, and a situation I'm sure a lot of people around the world have found themselves in. The Kents want to try everything they can in order to bear children. They try IVF, hormone treatments, and for over a year nothing seems to work. The couple then turn to religion, talking with the local priest about why they think God is punishing them since they feel they haven't done anything wrong, so why can they just not have kids? The priest talks about the story of Hannah and the book of Samuel, and how with God's help, Hannah was able to give birth to Samuel, one of the greatest prophets, and she was able to do it at an advanced age. The priest thinks that their troubles are all part of God's plan, and he has something wonderful in store for them. A year later, after Martha's expensive IVF treatments fail, the couple go into an adoption agency hoping to find a child they could take in, but are told it's a very extensive and expensive process. But still, Jonathan is hopeful something will come up, wanting to save up even more money for it. The couple head home and Jonathan thinks that they'll have to take a mortgage out on the farm to pay for it all, knowing that they will have a child and many generations to come raising on that farm. He assures his wife that they've made it this far and they'll keep doing what needs to be done and take what's coming their way, as long as they do it together. As Martha tells Jonathan to watch out for the rough patch of road ahead, Kal-El's rocket begins its descent into Earth's orbit. God, I love this since you know exactly where it's headed, you know exactly where it ends, but I just love getting this development and build up Shirley does in just these 8 pages he's given is just wonderful. And it's also extremely sad because obviously, if you don't know already, I've mentioned it before, but if you don't know already, in the present day, the Kents are both dead. They die in a car accident. So for them to, get all this, backstory and all this stuff, we'll get to see all these trials and tribulations, and then they get what they, want, and then they both die. It's like kind of sad, and I hate being, investing in these characters only to know that they're eventually going to die, and that does become a story way down the line. But it's so sad that they thought that killing off the Kents would be a great idea, because it means then we can't really have that many stories like this by people like Scholle writing them like this. Action Comics issue 5 dived headfirst into Morrison's weird and wonderful new take on Superman's origins and early days, swerving away from the champion of the oppressed stuff for a moment to get into his take on Krypton, their technology, and what it can do. I've thoroughly enjoyed coming back to see these issues after so many years of not reading them and being reminded just how much Morrison has a handle on these characters. Like they completely understand the Superman mythos, the characters, who they are, what they are, head to toe. Just no notes. To top that off, we get a wonderful Solly Fish backup that explores the Kents and their battle to start a family, and it makes me really want Solly Fish to actually be able to write more Superman. Even in nowadays, it's a crime that he didn't get given the actual Action Comics book when Morrison's time was up. He had a fantastic story laid out here with the Kents, and I would have liked to have seen a lot more of it from him too. Let me know in the comments what you thought about this issue, and join me next week as Superman battles the anti-Superman army alongside a legion of superheroes.